Hey everyone, my name is Roy, and in today's recording I'll be showing how you can create a GraphQL API for your HarperDB database. If you're not familiar with HarperDB, HarperDB is a database that exposes a REST API with data you can query using either SQL or NoSQL. And all of this goes to the REST API, which make it the perfect database to work together with StepZen, because with StepZen, as you might know, you can import any REST API using our CLI. And with this, let's first explore HarperDB and see what it looks like. If you would go to the HarperDB database, you can sign up for HarperDB Studio, which is their cloud offering. And with this, you can also choose if you want to have your database on their cloud or on your own cloud. Of course, I've already set up an instance, as it might take a couple of minutes to get started and get everything loaded. So this will load my demo instance, which is called demo StepZen demo.HarperDB cloud. And in this instance, you can see nothing is there yet. So I will still need to add a schema, which is my main database. And then I also need to add a table for this database. And of course, populate it with data. So let's first create a schema. Often I like to call this demo, as it serves the purpose of this recording. So let's create a schema called demo, which is happening quite fast. And then in this demo schema, we need to insert a database table. In example, listings. As I already have sample data on my device, which is listings data for Airbnb in the Netherlands, the country I live in. And also I need to set a hash attribute, which is basically the key for this table. So I will go for ID. So this will create this new table inside my HarperDB database, which of course has no records. And for this, I can either add data manually using this button. I can bulk upload CSV files, or one CSV file to be specific, or I can also use the REST API to populate my database with data. So for today, let's keep it simple. And what I will be doing is uploading a CSV file. In my new VS Code project, which I already set up, a listings.csv file is present, which I can just pull over to my browser and download it. And then, by going to the CSV button, I can actually drag and drop it in this area. And as you can see, it already saw that my CSV listings file contains 753 records, which I can easily import by pressing this button. And as you can see, whenever you do a manual upload, be sure that you adhere to the 10 megabytes limit. So this is inserting my data, which I can also do from a CSV file URL. So if you're having your data on a URL, you can also put it in there. Maybe it's in a AWS S3 bucket or something. You can see my data is here. It is 291 records, which were 753 rows in my CSV files, but records and rows are actually not the same thing if we're talking CSV files. But never mind. You can see it also created all these columns for my data, such as accommodates or amenities. And accommodates is how many people can stay in this Airbnb listing, also the bedrooms, and more data in there. You can also find the number of beds, and something else you can find here is the room type. Probably a bit more to the right. Neighborhoods, pictures, properties, reviews. And here room type. So room type is the type of room that you're actually renting or you're listing. And if I click on it, I can also explore it a bit further. And as you can see, this is all JSON data. But something cool we can do with HarperDB is we can also query it using SQL. So I would be going to the query tab. I can actually do this one, which I did before. Select everything from demo.listings and maybe limit it a bit to get just the last 5. Then execute. So this will get the last 5 listings from my database. As you can see, it is all the same columns that we saw before. But how do I get this data transformed to GraphQL? For this, we'll be using StepZen, and more importantly, the StepZen CLI. As I told you, I already set up a VS Code project, and the only thing I need to do here is call the REST API endpoint from HarperDB. And for this, they have set up a tab full of example code, and I can example take this one. So this raw query is already in curl format. As with StepZen, of course, we're importing curl commands to get a REST API. You can also use this curl command to get the data right here. Let's first try it out. copy pasting it in my terminal. Sure that nothing goes wrong. Let's clear it. Copy paste it there. And of course, the only thing I need to do is actually change this part to have the query that I previously had. So select everything from demo.listings and limit 5. You can see everything is there. So it has my REST API endpoint, which is my HarperDB cloud instance. I'm expecting JSON format, and I also have an authorization header. Now, if I press enter, you can see it's always saying Operation SQL. This will get my data right as a curl command. But of course, with StepZen, something else I can do is running StepZen import curl. Or maybe just get my previous command and paste it before. So I can omit some flags that I don't really need. An example, telling it is a post request, or telling the location, because we already know as we set a post body here. Just prepend it with StepZen import and then run curl. So this will start StepZen CLI. It will ask us how we want to name our endpoint. Let's go with this one. And then it also tells you StepZen import curl is a new feature. So if you have any issues, make sure to contact us directly or use the comments below here. As you can see, it created a new directory called curl, which has a GraphQL file with a type called root entry. All the columns were translated into GraphQL types, and also a query has been generated for me. Also, my authorization header has been put in a configuration file, which is all quite cool. And of course, I can also make these things, I can rename them either using the CLI or doing it by hand. So I can say here, this is listings, one listing actually, make sure it's updated here as well, listing. And I can also name my query something, get from HarperDB. Just to make stuff a bit nicer. I could have also done this from here. So what I should have been doing if I wanted to use the CLI to rename these things for me was using the query name flag and set this to get from HarperDB. And also set the query type to listing. So if I run this curl command instead, it would have generated this query and these return type for me automatically. But instead, I now did this by hand as I ran the curl already. So now the only thing I need to be doing is running StepZen start, which will deploy the GraphQL schema I just generated to StepZen's cloud. So this will take the GraphQL schemas I have and then push them to StepZen's cloud. But of course, CLI also likes to know if I want a private endpoint or a public one. So if you want a private and secure endpoint, you actually need to sign up for StepZen, which is quite easy. You only need to leave your email address and create a password, or even use one of our social logins. But as you use the CLI, you can also choose to go for a public endpoint, meaning your endpoint isn't protected and it will stay up for a limited amount of time. But for demo purposes, let's go with a public endpoint. So this will deploy my GraphQL files to StepZen's cloud. And then it will give you a nice message in the CLI terminal showing you what you can do with this. So you either have a public endpoint, which you deployed it, or you also have your local GraphQL IDE running, which you can explore this API, which we can then start doing. So we no longer need the HarperDB Studio. Instead, we can go to our GraphQL IDE. And in here, you're welcome to StepZen, and you can explore what data you can get. So we can get from HarperDB. We need to show that we want an operation. We have a SQL thing, and then we can get some fields. Also get the room type that we saw before, like accommodates, amenities, room type. So running this won't work because we need to tell them what's going on. And to need to tell them what's going on, we need to go back to our SQL curl actually that we did. So the previous command we run, it also included, it asks us for the operation type and also for the string. Let's try and do this. So operation type is SQL. And then let's have a look what our command actually was. So we have an operation type, SQL, And then we have an SQL query that is getting us data from the database. Let's put this one in here. So to select everything from demo.listings limit 5. So if I run this, it will call the data and will get the data from the HarperDB database endpoint. You can see there's quite some data in there, especially amenities is long. But something else I need to do here, as we're using a raw database query, we actually need to make sure that we only get the types that we're requesting, or only the fields we request. So amenities, accommodates, and room type. Go back here, clean this up a bit for you. Let's close this one. So we have accommodates, we then have amenities, and we also have the room type. So running this query instead will only get us the data we need, because the nice thing with GraphQL is that you only get the data you actually need. And depending on the database you're using, you can also import your database schema directly in StepZen using StepZen import MySQL or using StepZen import PostgreSQL. But HarperDB is a database on its own. So this way, this time we use the REST API endpoint. And of course, there's much more to explore in using HarperDB together with StepZen. And for this, you actually need to go to our website, which we published a blog showing you how to query data from HarperDB with GraphQL using StepZen. And here you can find the steps you just took, like uploading the database, pre-populating the database with listings from Airbnb, converting the HarperDB REST API to GraphQL as we just did, and then also deploying and running it as a StepZen GraphQL API. And then the final thing you can also do here is using another StepZen import curl to get a NoSQL REST API. And as you can see here, you can also instead of using a SQL query in your post body, you can also give it a JSON with some specifications, like you want to search values, you want to search fields by value. You have a schema, you have your table, the same one we just queried. You have a search attribute called room type. So this is a nice query to use if you want to find all the data for a specific room type. So I'd really recommend you to go to this blog, which the link I will post in the description as well, and explore more about how to set up HarperDB to work with the GraphQL API from StepZen. And with this, I'd like to end. I really hope you enjoyed this video and that you want to subscribe to our future videos. And also, if you'd like to use StepZen, go to stepzen.com/getting-started to get started with building with StepZen, or install our CLI from npm and get going that way. And with this, I'd like to end, and I hope to see you again soon.